Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Heavy Hands, one of the last episodes, in fact, of this wonderful, blessed year we've had called 2020. I'm your host, Connor Rebush. With me, as always, is Phil McKenzie. Phil! Hello.
What is up?
Hi. What is up, indeed? Well, I'll tell you what is up, Phil. Natural conversation. Phil just mentioned the movie Killing of a Sacred Deer to me, and now I feel like I'm going to be talking like Colin Farrell in that movie the rest of this episode, which is a really bad sign for an audio-only format. But anyway, we're doing like our last recap of the year. We have 4 weeks off ahead of us, which will, of course, be made, will be swiftly justified when on January 16th we begin a 6-day 3 UFC event period to make up for lost time. So really, if you think about it, we kind of get 1 week off, but it's going to feel like 4 while we're in the midst of it. And we're very excited for that. Next week, we're going to have time to do a crazy episode of The Handies. We have a million beautiful suggestions. But while I'm mentioning it, check out my Twitter. If you have any more category suggestions, hit us with them. But especially if you have nominees, I'm going to try to post some of our categories on Twitter, and I want you guys to suggest your nominees because Lord knows we're not going to think of all of them. But we're looking forward to that. Are you looking forward to that, Phil?
Oh, yeah. I think we're really kind of leaning into the stupidity of all the dumb awards we can give, and it's good to know that the listeners have been as well.
Yeah.
And some of these are absolutely fantastic, and some of them are mean.
Some of them are very mean. Many of them are mean, which is you could tell by Phil's emphasis there, is in fact more important to him than whether or not they're fantastic.
Yeah, so some of them are mean to us.
Oh, yeah.
Others are mean to other people. Some of them are fantastic and mean, and we're definitely including them.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. It's going to be a good one this year. We're going to have a wonderful awards show. But before that, we have to talk about stuff that happened last weekend. Thompson versus Neal was the card and the main event. And that's not the fight we're going to talk about first, because this is Heavy Hands. It's the last show of a terrible year, goddammit. And we're going to talk about my favorite 2 fighters. Jose Aldo and Chito Vera fought. And we both picked Jose, didn't we, Phil?
Yeah, we did.
Just before we get into that, Jose Aldo, Chito Vera, then we're going to talk about Thompson versus Neal, Wonderboy versus Neal, however you like to call it. We're going to talk about Michel Pereira's dumbass fight with Chaos Williams. We're going to basically just talk about this card. So that's what's slated for today's episode. But as for Aldo versus Vera, yeah, we both picked Jose, and apparently it was the wise call. I think the fact that Chito Vera is not the kind of fighter to stun you with something big and surprising in the first round was a very good starting point for Jose to think strategically about this matchup. And, turns out he's still, really goddamn good, as we kind of knew from his previous fight. And weirdly, Phil, I wasn't even sad for Chito Vera. I just feel like he'll be back. It's fine. It didn't have the sort of, he'll never contend again vibe that I thought it would, because he fights a lot. He'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, it just did things like it mandated for him that he's going to have to be in 5-round fights. That needs to be his goal.
Yeah,
he needs to be. They need to be. If that that thing where they said they were going to make co-main events 5 rounds. If that happens, then he should just be lobbying to get on whichever card he can be on that only goes. So he can only be in co-mains and mains. Yeah,
I think personally, I mean, this would be fucked up because the rankings are so poorly done, the way the UFC manages them. But I would love if all top 5 contenders bouts were 5 rounds. I would love them to open it up. I don't care where it is on the card.
Heavyweight.
Well, we might have to include that as a concession, but I would.
No,
we might have to accept it, but I would agree with you if I thought it was possible to make that exception.
Just make it. Who cares? They did a BMF belt.
True.
Also, mentioning the Chito Aldo fight, let's give a big shout out to BT Sports, which I used to watch these things, which has not put up its full replay of this card. Instead, has put up all the individual fights that people care about. It's put up Michelle Pereira versus Chaos Williams. It's put up Moraes versus Font. It's put up Tybura versus Hardy, Pettis versus Morono, and Thompson versus Neal. It's put up all the fights that everyone cares about.
Really sort of in direct defiance of the show and our show. And me saying to you before, like, people care about Aldo Cheeto more than the main event, right? And then there was a long pause on your end, and then I realized I was just projecting, and really, I care about Aldo and Cheeto.
And so I had to watch it on a pirate stream.
Mm-hmm. That's the way to do it.
So...
General thoughts. Yeah, what did you think of Jose's performance? I guess we could get into, like, what Cheeto could have done differently. I think there were some options, but what do you think?
So, I think in general, this one really hit the note which described this card. At least the significant fights in this card.
Mm-hmm.
You could have subtitled this one. If cards still had names, I think this would have been, in the end, it would have been UFC like business-like.
Yeah.
Or like professional.
Mm-hmm.
Anything kind of like that, because this was really booked as a banger card. Or at least like as a very good card on paper. It wasn't really that good. A lot of the fights you would have expected to be really fun were not particularly fun. And I think this was sort of a bit like that. Because it was a decent fight, but it was pretty much the baseline for how exciting a Jose Aldo Marlon Vera fight could be.
Mm-hmm.
It's at a steady simmer.
Yeah, it certainly could have been crazier. And if we both agree, I believe, that if it were a 5-rounder, it would have been. Even if the exact same 3 rounds had played out, it would have become more exciting. So we really were sort of confined. Yeah, it was sort of like, I didn't hate this card at all. I think people know well enough by now that if I have a vested interest in the fights, I am willing to sit through a fight that's maybe not as exciting because I care about what happens. But it was sort of an okay sort of card. Like after the first round of most fights, you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like this is the obvious flip side of the shit that the UFC always spouts, or Dana specifically always spouts before, really anonymous cards. It's like, well, you never know. Like, no, you don't. So you could book a card with all these people in. You can book it with Chaos Williams and Michelle Pereira and Jose Aldo and Marlon Vera and two strikers at the top, and you don't really get many scintillating moments. It just happens sometimes. It's not like a indictment on the event or the people involved in it, but yeah, this was, I think this was, and it was often one where like the dynamics of the fights were set pretty clearly, pretty early.
Yeah.
I think, and we mentioned a lot about this, before the fight. I think the problem for Cheeto is, what does Cheeto do to initiate offense?
Yeah.
He basically said he does raw low kicks until the other person, tries to close distance, and then he's like, "Oh, we're banging now. We're just gonna throw it out." Or they back up, and then he can walk them into the fence.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the interesting thing was that in that way, this sort of resembled a version of the Volkanovski game plan. You could see that Vera was trying to sort of get that working for the first part of the first round. It was like, I can rack up a few not particularly meaningful low kicks. I can push him into the fence and tire him out. It sort of worked.
Mm-hmm. It worked for like 2 minutes. And also, yeah. I think, honestly, I feel like we called this one pretty fucking well. Because one of Cheeto's other areas of strength that we specifically mentioned was in the clinch. Jose's passivity in the clinches definitely did tell. And when Cheeto was burning time off the clock in his favor, those were basically the moments when he had Aldo clinched up. That was when it was like, okay, Aldo's not winning right now. Cheeto is in control. If he could do this for a full round, he would win a boring round. But I kind of think, Cheeto is not as good as Alexander Volkanovski.
No, I think the one thing, the one major thing is, I think you could probably do it. You could probably still maybe run that game plan without Volkanovski's skill.
Mm-hmm.
If you were, as brute tough and indefatigable as Cheeto. But the one thing is Cheeto is he's just not quick enough.
Not quick enough. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I mean, I also think, like, the point you made about Cheeto's game not really being designed to do this. Like, if Cheeto can't just push pace alone on you, you're right. He doesn't have a whole lot of clever, sort of like subversive ways of getting into range or initiating an exchange. I mean, really, the real problem was that Cheeto could not keep Aldo on the back foot. And that's how he wins. He had to do that. The clinches were very helpful in getting him into that moment. But I also think that, I said, A, Cheeto's not as good as Volkanovski, but I think B, there's a suggestion that Aldo may have taken a cue from that fight. 'Cause he seemed really, really aware of what was happening in the rounds in this fight. Like, the first round went by, 2 minutes went by, basically, where Cheeto had clinched Aldo up in the first round. And I was like, uh-oh. It's not going to be as exciting as I thought, but this is one of the ways it could happen that Aldo loses. And then Aldo separated and immediately started smashing Cheeto's ribs with punches. And then setting up low kicks and pressing forward. Most importantly, I think Aldo really, really recognized that he could only afford to spend like a minute or two per round going backwards or in a position that wasn't dominant. And it appeared to me he fought with that sort of strategic like framework in his head, that he was just trying to win this fight, as you said before, in a professional, controlled manner. So yeah,
I think it is also that he wants to be secure that he's going to be like hitting the other guy when he goes. We as we mentioned about him, he's when Aldo commits, he wants to be sure that it's going to work.
Yeah.
With his sort of flaws. I think, with Cheeto, he knew it would. Like, Cheeto's pretty flat-footed. He's just mostly a high guard defensively.
Yep.
Like, super tough. He wasn't going to wipe him out like our old... Why do I always forget his name?
Douglas De Silva?
You like him as a fighter? No, like Moicano. Wasn't going to wipe him out like... Aldo wasn't going to wipe out Vera like Moicano.
You just do it just to spite the fight site, boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like him. I've always liked him.
Mm-hmm. That's what you say.
But yeah, he knew he could hit Vera. I don't think he knew he could hit Volkanovski. He was like... So right. he kept waiting for like the triggers to come.
Yeah.
And the time went by and he was sort of trapped between the two parts of the game. I think with Vera, there was only really one part of the game that he had to worry about. And it was interesting. Like, how did you score this one? I mean, did you give Vera that second round? Because I don't think I did.
I didn't, actually. I could see an argument for it, but I did not. I gave Aldo all 3 rounds.
Because I felt like it was a fact that everyone was like, "Oh yeah, I think he might have gotten that one," and all 3 judges gave it to him. I did feel like it was a bit of a momentum round thing. It was like he had some success in like the last minute.
Absolutely.
Like, oh well, that's wrapped it up for him.
It was like 3 of the rounds from Figueiredo Moreno. The same thing happened. Where the commentators were noticing that there was a momentum shift happening in like the last minute of the round. That didn't do nearly enough to bank Moreno the round, but they did note that there was a shift happening. Yeah, I think that was exactly what happened here. That Cheeto was starting to have success, and I think especially if you know Cheeto, you're like, uh-oh, the fight is turning, but I don't think he won that round. Like, that round opened with 2 minutes of Aldo just hitting him with whatever he wanted.
I was thinking like he's probably still going to have to try and finish him in this round, but apparently no. Apparently he could have just won the 3rd round and then he would have won.
Apparently, yep.
A unanimous decision.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and then Aldo going to his wrestling game and his back take, like some ways, nice to see. It's good to see,
yeah.
We saw in several points in this card. I think, at least 4 other times, basically almost every other main card fight apart from Thompson Neal. These sort of older, more experienced fighters decide to be like, you know what? Time to take the craziness out of this fight, and time to go to my wrestling game, even though I don't generally do that.
Including Michel Pereira, the dirty fucking traitor that he is.
Oh my
Even
God.
he had that thought. Jose Aldo's allowed to have those thoughts, you son of a bitch. He's earned it. He was a crazy bastard for many years, okay?
Also, he's good.
He's good.
Aldo to watch good people do good things.
He's destined to be more than a meme, so it's okay for him. Yeah. Yeah, I can see some people being frustrated. Certainly Cheeto was frustrated. In fact, I think the only moment of my life that I've ever been annoyed with Cheeto, and this includes the racism.
I was gonna say.
I'm okay with that. I can accept racism, but I draw the line. Phil.
I know you can.
But I draw the line at making jagoff motions while Jose Aldo is controlling your back. Twice. No, sir. Very disrespectful to the GOAT. Yeah, I can understand.
It's okay as long as it's against Chinese people on a rebush. And from fighters that I like.
See, this is the problem, Phil, is I do this shit to you all the time where I'll characterize some opinion you don't hold, but you always, resist. Whereas my instinct, you do it to me, is to just grin and accept this label. So, I'm really sorry to our Chinese listeners. I really am. I don't mean it, but I also can't say that.
He doesn't mean it, but also he has posters of Chito Vera and Joanna Jędrzejczyk above his bed.
Well... They just say what everyone's thinking, Phil.
Oh my God.
I can understand people being frustrated like Cheeto was with the third round. Obviously, for me, I was emotionally on Aldo's side. So I was like, oh yes, good call. You're fighting smart. You're a genius. Good for you. I was fine with it. As an
also,
ending.
It was for a fight. This was one where the sort of business-like nature of this card was blessing, because these are two pretty violent people. Didn't really want them to take steps towards ending each other's careers in this fight.
Yeah.
And the fact that the last round was just clear, completely undamaging back control.
Mm-hmm.
Fine.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on, guys. And, Vera can be like, "Oh, he didn't fight me, he was scared. He can keep his brand intact." And Jose's got a nice win.
Mm-hmm. I gotta say, if you're Cheeto Vera, it is arguably not a great look to just be stuck in back control for an entire round with no progress.
By a huge...
sure.
jacked form of featherweight who's been a black belt for however many years.
Yes, for many, many years. Yeah, absolutely. But even so, it
wasn't a great look.
Cheeto's supposed to be crazy in those ground positions, and I think we see that sort of like Tony Ferguson. There is still a positional limit to his craziness. There are just certain places, if he's put on his back or if he's locked in a position, he can't just improvise his way out of it.
Yeah, I think that was one of the genuinely really insightful things John Jones has said when he was talking about Alexander Gustafsson. He was like.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was like, "Oh, this guy's a great anti-wrestler." He's like, "No, he's not. It's just his grappling isn't that good. If you put him into a control system and into a control situation for long enough, past the initial scramble, he doesn't have great jiu-jitsu." And he was right.
Yeah,
I think that you see that a lot more now.
I think that's a dynamic that's present all over the place in MMA, just based on the way people have to learn it. You're obviously going to prioritize the game heavily incentivizes you to prioritize immediate scrambles, and these continuing dynamic exchanges on the ground. And I talk about this all the time with it being so effective at flyweight because it's the ultimate example of, we only really know how to scramble, and when it stops, we're kind of confused. But that's present, I think, almost everywhere in this sport. So, yeah.
Yep.
Good call by John Jones. No one ever said he couldn't think strategically, so. Well, shall we take a break? And when we return, Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal, another sort of business-like. I mean, actually, I quite enjoyed this.
Yeah. I mean, this I think, weirdly, this was kind of the exception to the rule.
Sure. I mean, Stephen Thompson was still
gritty performance, but yeah, we'll
he
talk
just
about it
is.
after the break.
Yeah, he is a gritty bastard. It was like a combination of the Masvidal fight I expected and the Luque fight that we had in Thompson's last performance. But let's wait to talk about that till after we come back. And then Font Moraes, Pereira Williams. I think we're going to talk about Tybura Hardy just because Greg Hardy got his ass beat. And Pettis Morono. All of that, maybe more, after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Okay, welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are moving back in time now to the main event, or forward in time. We're talking about the main event, Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal. 5 rounds of Jeff Neal. Well, I feel like we called it quite well. Once again, this is a real good. The professional ass performances always feel like they give us an opportunity to pat ourselves right on the ass.
These people did what we expected. Well done, gentlemen.
They fought in this is a good nerd card. Everyone fought in the nerd-approved fashion.
Yeah, I feel like this one was a synthesis of our two approaches. I was like, Jeff Neal's going to follow him around trying to set the left hand up, and it's going to be boring. You're like, he will try and do that, but it's going to be exciting. I think actually, no, you were more right than I am.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You were about to say that somehow you were equally right when I mean, it really was the Masvidal fight for 3 rounds, right?
5, yeah.
Well, I think the Luque fight kind of started to happen in rounds 4 and 5. Neal,
I guess you're right.
Neal reached a point where he gave up on being Jorge Masvidal, a point which Jorge Masvidal himself obviously never reaches, and decided that if he wasn't going to solve this with whatever game plan he came in with, he was going to swing it out. So the last 2 rounds were, I thought this fight had a nice sort of simmer that slowly built, and the only thing that took away from it was the fact that you kind of knew Stephen Thompson was winning the whole time. But, you know, it was competitive throughout, and Jeff Neal made a very good account of himself. I thought he gave it a great effort. So yeah, let's start breaking it down, I guess. Stephen Thompson, good MMA striker, good footwork,
yes.
Good counters, and perhaps most importantly, I mean, we have known this about him since the very beginning of his UFC run, because he may have lost, but Stephen Thompson definitely shut up anyone who thought he was like a silly point fighter alone when he had that fight with Matt Brown. Which was an absolute banger in which Stephen Thompson was in there swinging punches till the very end. He's always had that grit underneath the sort of slick, nice guy exterior. And this is probably a sign that he's nearing the end or is approaching the point of finally being solved or outmoded by the division around him. But in his last 2 fights, we have seen very marked examples of just how gritty Stephen Thompson actually is. When the moment comes when his back is to the fence and he can't get away, or he feels the opponent like upping the momentum, he feels them starting to advance more quickly, more aggressively, he's just going to plant his feet and throw 4 or 5 punches and exchange with you. And he's really not that bad at doing it, actually. He's actually kind of a good brawler in the pocket, as far as pocket brawlers go. So
yeah, because he's just extremely accurate.
Yeah, he keeps his eyes open.
There's no like special defense to it when he's doing it. He's just like when he's pumping those punches, he's sure that they are like doing it extremely calmly, and he's sure that they're going to connect.
Yeah, they're mostly very tight, collected punches, which shouldn't be surprising coming from Thompson. But even in the extended exchanges, even when it's just like a 1-2, 1-2, 1, they're accurate and quick and right down the middle. He's very effective in these exchanges, even if it is the place where he's clearly at the most risk. It's always a calculated risk, and typically it works pretty damn well.
I mean, I was very impressed by, like, he was kicking off those exchanges.
Yeah. He had some that was hilarious.
There was one point where he was, like, they were virtually chest to chest.
Yeah.
He threw 4 punches and then body kicked Neal before running away.
Yeah. It's the type of shit that, like, you would see someone like Charles Rosa do. And be like, that's not going to work, you idiot. Why try that? But Stephen Thompson makes it work. He just has a feel for, this guy's feet are planted. He's in exchange mode. I'm at the right distance where I can do this and get away before he can do anything about it. Very smart fighter. That's all there is to say about Stephen Thompson. He's 37 years old, goddammit. And he's still in there doing this. He doesn't really look markedly worse than any other point in his MMA career. So,
I mean, I have always thought that he is a great MMA athlete.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It was one of those early KOs against not particularly good people, and he finished it, and then he did, backflip 180.
I think that was the Dan Stitchen knockout, the very first UFC fight. He did the crazy, like, aerial twist combo and ended in a superhero pose.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's like, there aren't that many welterweights who can do that.
No, they really aren't. Yeah.
And now at 37, he's having, whilst he won it clearly, still a very tough fight, but also, I think one of his highest paced fights.
Oh, yeah.
And over 5 rounds. And he still looked fine at the end of it. Like, remarkable stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, his fight with Rory McDonald probably would have looked like this if Rory had kept the pressure up. I don't think this represents a really drastic slide of any kind. I just think Vicente Luque and Jeff Neal, like, if it had just been the first 3 rounds of this, we would have thought he beat Jeff Neal in much the same fashion he did Masvidal. I'll make that comparison as often as I can. And Luque is just always going to be the kind of matchup that's going to put Stephen Thompson in those spots and make him fight that way. But I still think you put him in there right now with Johnny Hendricks.
Woodley.
Yeah, with Tyron Woodley. Put him in there, run back all the classics. I think you put him in there right now with the modern equivalent of I think he could still possibly beat Robert Whittaker, is what I'm saying. I don't think Stephen Thompson's really gotten that much worse.
I think this would still be a very challenging matchup for Robert Whittaker. Whittaker was struggling with Till's sort of newfound Wonder Boy impression.
Yep.
And the boy is much, much better at it than he is.
Yeah. So you just got to respect it, man. It's a style that really, really works, and he's really, really good at doing it. And here's what I love. He actually brought in some, like, not really Stephen Thompson-esque elements, I think, to complement this this increased importance of anti-pressure tools. A couple times in this fight.
The elbows and the body shots?
Yeah, the elbows were nice. He did the Machida counter knee.
Oh, yeah.
Like 2 or 3 times, and it worked. It's because it's a really good move. I mean, you don't want to get shogunned in the middle of it, but otherwise, it's a great move. It was one of Machida's most consistently successful attacks because it would just, you got the impression that lunging and trying to attack him, and you had to lunge, would just sap your energy and hurt like shit every time. So I really liked that as like an actual new wrinkle as a 37-year-old karate practitioner. Was awesome. How about Jeff Neal? Any thoughts on his performance?
I mean, hard to say. It's not a good look.
I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, he didn't win.
It was very gritty.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was an incredibly tough performance.
Mm-hmm.
It was also just bullheaded. It was just like, this hasn't been working at all. Maybe if I just keep doing it exactly the same way, it will work at some point.
Yeah.
And it was just no. It was just, I mean, it was exactly really what we feared, is that he's he had tools to make it work, but he's primarily a power punching counter fighter and a headhunter. So it's all left hands and high kicks to the head in his UFC career thus far, and I saw Jack Slack talking about this on Twitter. Why would you go in to fight Stephen Thompson and not prepare any kind of low kick offense? Why would you go in to fight Stephen Thompson? Like, it's been shown that if you really showing that you can take his punches, like, you're not going to try and slow him down by kicking the leg at all. I mean, Thompson's leg just got hurt randomly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It just, he's old. His body started to explode at some point.
That's how Cannonier versus Silva showed that. If you fight old people, you should just low kick them.
Yeah. Boy, I didn't even really think of that detail, but it does add some dramatic irony that Stephen Thompson's leg almost just exploded on its own.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think one part of his... Yeah.
He got kneed in the leg once or something. That preceded the weird welt. Like, there was something that caused it. But, it wasn't a concerted effort on Jeff Neal's part. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I think some part of Wonderboy, is perhaps as frustrated as other people are that, this just isn't happening. No one's bothering to low kick him. And his leg was just come on, I'll show you. Look. Waiting to be fucked up here.
Yeah.
I don't know what they thought. This was a bad look for Neal, bad look for Fortis, that they were we're going to headhunt Stephen Thompson.
Sort of the Morono fight too, right? It was sort of a bad look for Fortis all night.
Yeah.
There were two performances where they desperately needed their fighter to cut off the fucking cage. And it didn't happen nearly as much as it should. So yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I think with both these guys, I'm sort of willing to believe that it's a specific, in some ways, a fighter specific problem. Like, we did point out the headhuntery thing with Neal. We talked about his kicks. I was like, man, this guy has the capacity to do some really good low kicking. And I believe you pointed out immediately, does he do that though? And no, he doesn't. And he didn't in this fight. But also the cage cutting was a big problem. Like, you just can't follow Stephen Thompson around. Like, duh. I don't, I'm not to make it sound easier than it is, but everyone knows that, right? If you're a game planning, a strategic camp, that's number one. You can't follow Stephen Thompson around. His footwork is good. You have to keep him in front of you. And he just didn't do that well enough. So yeah, but I will say that coming in with either a stylistic limitation that he couldn't get over, or with an inadequate game plan, either or both of those could be the case. It was still an opportunity to see that Jeff Neal he's a serious gamer. Yeah. He continued pushing and he reached that point, like I said, that Jorge Masvidal never would have reached in the same exact kind of fight, where he was like, I'm going to gamble on just going for it. And he went for it really hard. He forced a lot of exchanges. It's just a bad matchup for him, to be honest. And Stephen Thompson seemed to have mostly figured it out from the get-go.
And I respect that, even at the end, and Thompson had it in the bag.
Yeah.
An old man fucking Hollowayed it out with Neal in the middle of the cage. Pretty much, much like Holloway did, much won those last wild exchanges. When it looked like it might have actually been turning at that point. Like I said, crazy gritty performance from Wonderboy.
Yep.
And just it's such a weird contextual. His MMA career has such a weird context to it. He's still never really been solved. He's no fight of his where you can look at it and you can just be like, oh yeah, that shows you how you beat Stephen Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways he may be in I have this vision in my head of like the applicability of a style like Stephen Thompson's, like becoming less and less the further down you go in weight. And like the more either attributes or skills you need to tack on to that to make it work. So part of me sort of thinks that welterweight may be like the last division where a Stephen Thompson could work. But also, we've said it before and it's worth saying again. There's something about the style of the Stephen Thompsons of the world, not just this specific one, but all these point karate stylists, that translates very well and naturally to MMA. And it's the distance. These guys they're used to evading and staying really, really far away. And for MMA fighters who are like across the board just now learning how to box and feint, basically, who most of them, like Chito Vera, is a contender, and the guy we just said of him doesn't know how to close the distance unless he can just force an exchange and swing it its way in. That is the state of so many MMA fighters, and I think always will be. There's a reason that everyone wants to be at long distance. Everyone wants extra time and space to figure out what the opponent is doing. And Stephen Thompson is like the embodiment of that mindset. He's like operating at a slower, more controlled speed than everything around him. So he has more time, even more space at the same distance that you think you prefer to just see absolutely everything you're trying to do before you ever get into range to do it. It's just a very applicable style. So proven yet again, point karate fucking works in the UFC. All right, now let's get mad, Phil. I don't think we're going to have a lot to say technically about this one, so we'll try to cram it in at the end of this segment. We got to vent some emotions. Michel Pereira is supposed to be a joke, okay? He's supposed to be dumb. He's supposed to be bad at MMA and succeed despite that. That's what makes him fun. I don't like smart Michel Pereira, Phil. I don't like him. He's not smart in the way Kevin Holland is when he's smart. When he's like becomes more decisive and more clever and adds more layers. Michel Pereira becoming more smart is only a process of taking things away. Michel Pereira being smart is because he is a man who can do everything and usually does. Him being smart is just paring away all of the stupid shit that makes his style unique and all the shit that got him to the UFC in the first place. And so, yeah, this was a smart fight from Michel Pereira, and fuck him for it, you know?
Oh, this was so bad.
It was, right?
Why?
Also, he didn't win. Can I say that? Chaos Williams won this fight.
Me?
I thought Chaos Williams won. I thought he landed all the cleanest punches in the first two rounds. The only argument I can understand is that I thought if it weren't for that rear naked choke, I would entertain zero argument that the Michel Pereira won the second round. And there's the fact that he had a choke in that seemed like he might have finished it in a couple seconds that I think swayed people. But basically every time they would come together, Chaos Williams would hit him with a left hook.
Mm-hmm.
Like every time they came together. Even when Pereira landed, Chaos Williams would hit him with a big, clean left hook. So yeah.
I do remember how he landed all the, like, this was a dismal fight for Pereira. Like,
it really was the most middleweight fight in welterweight history, was it not?
That's the thing. Like, we saw Ngannou Lewis coming.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see this coming. I was like, these guys are too bad. And then I realized, like, Chaos Williams has been fighting people, pretty aggressive people. Michel Pereira, like, yeah, I think he does just, like, he needs to feel like he's the big man in the cage before he can be interesting, and he's been trying to be more professional. I think this was the confluence of those two things coming together to give us a absolutely, like, Guida Maynard-esque performance from him.
That he was both focused and psyched out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that he was, I mean, he just didn't do anything.
Single shots, front kicks to the body, got countered on about 80% of them. kept throwing him.
Mostly it was just like fainting.
Yeah. lead lefts.
No, I was then like figuring like who's the worst person they could give him who would just, some kind of tough, rugged wrestler who would just grind him out. Guys, they don't really exist in welterweight anymore. If they do, they're old and towards the top of the division. The days of dangerous young wrestlers coming up through the division seem to be mostly over.
Yeah.
So I don't even know who to punish Pereira with for this performance.
There's a guy I'm thinking of who was in the UFC relatively, Cody something. Damn it. He's quite a veteran and he's really fragile, but he is a dogged wrestler. So that would be an interesting one. I don't know. I mean, the real problem with Pereira is they already did give him that guy. It was Tristan Connolly.
Yeah.
They already lost to the worst guy they could find that could beat him.
Yeah, I just want that to happen again.
Yeah, but don't rematch because Tristan Connolly deserves better than that because he'll probably lose.
Or just give him
nature will heal itself.
Give him big, boring people so that he loses all his hype.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If you give him Daniel Rodriguez, and Daniel Rodriguez repeats his performance against Dalby, then they can have a terrible, terrible fight together.
I think you throw him in there with Neal Magny.
Neal Magny is booked.
He's booked to fight Carlos Condit, which is in direct contradiction of your theory. I think
Neal Magny.
Yeah.
Already fought Carlos Condit. He beat him.
I think he's booked to fight him. Oh no, sorry, Matt Brown just got booked to fight Carlos Condit.
He's booked. Neal Magny is booked to fight. How is it? Like a relatively interesting fight.
Clearly, I don't know.
But yeah, he's booked. Yes, that would be a good one. Oh, Michael Chiesa.
Oh yeah, that is a good one. But yeah, Neal Magny, like if he wins that fight, Michel Pereira, they're going to overmatch him anyway because they clearly want to push him. So yeah, just do that. Neal Magny will solve him.
He's too far high up the ranks anyway. They need to give him someone like...
Yeah. All right, well...
regardless, awful fight.
It does seem to have broken our spirits, thinking about it. Yeah, I thought, I will say this. I thought Chaos Williams fought the better fight of the two. But I also think very, very revealing of what his limitations will be. Revealing in lots of ways, actually. I learned a lot about Chaos Williams that I think gives me a much better understanding of his game. The counter punching is it's a nice staple for him to rely on. It's going to work quite a bit, I think, at welterweight. The thing that's not really going to work at welterweight, at least not if he gets ranked any higher than this, owing to what you just said, is that he has no takedown defense. His takedown defense was very poor, and his scrambling from the bottom was equally poor. And Michel Pereira was very smart in the most damnable way to hit those two takedowns because they almost certainly sealed the fight for him. Yep. Well, let's take a break. We're going to try to get happy again in the interim. When we come back, Rob Font brutally executing Marlon Moraes, Marcin Tybura hilariously executing Greg Hardy, and Anthony Pettis making Fortis MMA look bad yet again. After this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are continuing down the main card of UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Neal, with Rob Font versus Marlon Moraes. And the first thing I want to say, Phil, is that this is the division that made Renan Barão. And
you have keyed into exactly what I was thinking.
Boy, does this feel like not even the very beginning of another Barao-esque fall from bantamweight glory. Because Jesus Christ, Marlon Moraes went from 4 phenomenal wins, like the split over John Dodson, not very compelling, whatever. The 3 after that, incredible instantaneous finishes, which maybe is a lesson for all of us. A lesson we'll have to learn forever, not to put too much stock in those kinds of things. But boy, to go from that over Jimmy Rivera, Rafael Assunção, and Aljamain Sterling to losing...
That is one of the best 3 fight streaks in bantamweight history.
Yeah, it's incredibly good. That's a really, really massive streak. And to go from that immediately to losing 3 of 4, 1 to a Jose Aldo who really did, in retrospect, look like he was just coming to grips with what it felt like to fight at 135 and was not on his A game. And then the other 3, all to good fighters, but all knockouts. 3 losses by knockout after that run, immediately after that run. So yeah, what are your thoughts? You clearly had some thoughts already on the downfall of Marlon Moraes.
I mean, like you started talking about Renan Barão, and I was just, yes, this is exactly like the first thing I was going to say about Marlon Moraes is just like, welcome to Barão Town.
Yeah, population, Barão, and Miguel Torres. Who's sadly not even named after him, even though he was the first to have it happen.
I mean, Moraes, so I mean, one of the interesting things, obviously, is that Moraes tried to, and with some success, execute the same veteran, oh, you won't expect me to do this, and go to my takedowns game plan that almost everyone else did on this card.
He really is a bootleg Aldo. And I say bootleg because he's deficient in a couple of very, very important areas.
Yeah. So, I mean, defense being the main one, but also, was what happened when Rob Font hit him? I know Rob Font is a hard hitter. He has famously, like, hit and hurt people. That is now all 3 of those fights against Cejudo and Font and Sandhagen, where Sandhagen, and
Sandhagen,
where he's gotten hit, and he's just absolutely frozen.
Yeah,
like a deer in the headlights. Reaction to it now is appalling.
I mean, like, you just have to assume that Cejudo broke him. That's the only conclusion. Like, I mean, I think we are seeing revealed some problems that Marlon has had throughout his career. Problems that we were well introduced to in that Cejudo loss. We really had to reckon with then. But he didn't always take punches this poorly. You know, he took shots back in his fight in 2015. His fight with Shaman Moraes. He took big shots from a big puncher. He exchanged with him. He beat him in the exchanges. And that was how he kept the pace of that fight manageable. He couldn't do that against Cejudo. But that's not what's happening anymore. The last 2 fights have not been fights in which he's failing to maintain the pace and then getting overwhelmed and having his fight computer overloaded with information. This is literally like that has broken his processing unit. The fact that finally did happen. Corey Sandhagen and Rob Font didn't really have to hit him with much. Like you said, 1 clean shot, and he freezes. I think it's somewhat mental, but I also think, like, this may be the rare occasion where we just get to say, dude's chin is gone. Like, 1 clean shot from Rob Font, a jab. Actually, I think there was a shot before that hurt him and set him up to be sat down by the jab. I think he got hit in an exchange with an uppercut or something. But it didn't take much. And likewise in the Sandhagen fight, like, you know, it was a ridiculous final blow, but he just does not react well to being hit anymore. And that was not always the case with Marlon Moraes. There is a definite change.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, like I said, it just feels like Renan Barão.
Yeah,
like,
right.
like after Dillashaw, like that there were still times when he could fight after Dillashaw, but they weren't very many of them, and they disappeared more over time.
Yep.
And it's just the fact that there was that point where they traded jabs, and then he just sort of stood there after that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's an exaggeration of Moraes' problems that, he is always just someone who's relied on foot speed and just kind of being there and being the harder puncher, the harder kicker. So someone with huge arms and massive power is always going to be a problem, in the same way that someone with just huge arms and tons of volume and variety is going to be a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the fact that he's had in all three of those fights just these protracted dead man walking sequences.
Yeah.
We're just like, once the ball is started rolling, he is toast.
Yeah.
He is clearly toast. He is absolutely visibly like, oh man, this guy's out of there. Whether he's already unconscious or whether he's just freaking out, it does not matter.
Right. It's difficult to say whether it's mental or physical, but it's also sort of a moot point, because like Renan Barão, whether it's his chin is getting worse or his confidence is getting worse or both, and they're connected. It's like the moment something, all it does is it pushes that threshold of when he breaks back further and further. That's what happened to Renan Barão, where like, it's like a trauma thing where something like that Dillashaw fight happens, especially when you're in a position, which I imagine Marlon also was, of thinking like, oh my God, I can't lose. I'm incredible. And then to have the rug pulled out from under you as rudely as it was by Dillashaw versus Barão and Cejudo by Moraes. I mean, that was more humiliating. So Cejudo, I mean, people may have known he was good already, but it was also one of the dumbest fights of all time, and he still won.
In Barão's defense, though, it happened to him twice.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. In defense of Barão being the worst case, you mean?
Yeah.
It's a weird way to defend him, but I appreciate.
I mean, if you want to be broke, if you're saying people are broken, you'd ideally want it to be from bad things.
Sure. Yeah. I see what you're saying. I was thinking it made him look worse that the same exact thing happened twice in a row.
I mean, it just must have been like very damaging for him to be like, no, I think I can get over this, can overcome this trauma, I can beat BJ Dillashaw, and then Dillashaw just punched him to death again. Yeah,
and then what we saw with Barão is I think what we're seeing now with Moraes, where he reaches a point where he realizes, oh fuck, it's happening again, and that it takes less and less with each passing fight for him to reach that moment, and when he reaches that moment, it takes less and less time for him to then totally collapse. So in this fight, it was like, oh, I come in with a clever idea. I've made some adjustments in camp. I did all the things fighters are supposed to do in reaction to their losses. I'm going to come in here and take this dude down. Everything was going perfectly. And then one hiccup. The hiccup was just like to the extent of Font got up. That's not a failure, but in Marlon Moraes' mind, it seemed to register as a failure. So yeah, it's a hard place to fall, and a long, brutal way down at 135. It's a jungle. You know what makes me feel very good, though, Phil? Watching this GIF I made of Greg Hardy gasping like a landed fish and having to avert his eyes as a schlubby Polish man comes over to bump fists with him while he's sitting on his ass just gasping and breathing and looking completely miserable. Marcin Tybura. He's got to be a late contender for a handy nomination or two. Like, this was a great, average, bang, middle of the road dude beats giant athlete moment. Very, very satisfying, even aside from the fact that it was actually Greg Hardy. So I loved it. I thought, thoughts?
This was it's a weird one, because for the first minute of this fight, this is the first time I've been genuinely somewhat impressed with Greg Hardy.
I know. That's why all the other reason I wanted to talk about it, and the only reason, in fact, that I think I'm willing to talk about his clear technical improvements, is that he got smushed. But yeah, he's gotten so much better, and I hate it so much.
Like, he was defending shots.
Yep.
He was, putting his head back and seeing when they were coming. He had some semblance of footwork.
He was countering in combination.
Throwing counter combinations. He looked like a genuinely reasonably decent weight boxer, and then he followed this up with his one of the most embarrassing rounds I've seen banked this year.
It really was.
It was really one of those things where you're like, oh my god, am I going to have to take Hardy seriously now? And then it was like, no, no, don't take him there. No. I was like,
I don't often get to be like a dumbass fan. Like, I don't allow myself to just go full dumbass fan mode. But like, I do it with Greg Hardy. And so like when he loses, I'm just sitting there like, you coward. You're pathetic. You suck shit. Oh my god, that guy beat you so easily. I never say this type of shit to fighters. I mean, people think I'm rude and crass and sarcastic, which I am, but like, I respect fighters for what they do. And I have no respect for Greg Hardy, and it feels great to see him lose like this. It really does.
I mean, it's rare that combat sports gives you like moral moments like this where you're like, oh, this person should be a coward in the cage because he's, he's a woman beater. Like, then he is.
He is.
It's very gratifying.
It's very clearly proven.
It's a real Team Evil moment.
Yeah.
I still don't really get the fact that he's at ATT when, Team Evil is just across the road.
Right
they must
there.
Just be like, yeah.
They're looking out the window across the street, just drooling on the windowsill. Like, please, Greg, you will be our team captain. We need you. Yeah, he's like a fucking Team Evil mascot. It's a shame that he's at ATT.
It is absolutely bizarre. And it was so bad. The fact that the commentary team was still sort of talking about. It was one of these things where they had to. It takes a while for a 3-man booth to change narrative. Yeah. Still sort of talking about how good he was looking for just to that second round, whilst he was just sort of panting and backing away. And
they were still stuck on celebrating how good he was, while Greg Hardy was thinking, shit, just desperately trying to forestall the loss that he knew at that moment was coming. Because Marcin Tybura almost got finished. He almost got finished to the perfect Derek Lewis-esque extent that Greg Hardy exhausted himself going for it. In the moment I think Tybura came out in round 2 and was like, I'm going to come forward and throw things, Greg Hardy was done. He didn't have any energy left. He couldn't do what he did in the first round.
But it took a fairly long time for that to happen, as he mostly just
backed away.
He's gotten, even as he was incredibly gassed, he was still okay at surviving, but then Brad took him down and
he folded. He mentally,
that was bad.
Instant.
That looked bad.
Yeah.
The only thing I could say, the only thing which could possibly be like mediating factor for this is Hardy is genuinely asthmatic. If that's true, like he genuinely couldn't breathe, and that's why he looked that bad. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, he shouldn't be in the UFC, and he shouldn't be a professional fighter.
No,
because as much as he is a huge dick and like clearly a pretty bad person, that's a huge health risk.
It is, yeah. If he is asthmatic,
but if he's not that, then he's just like. That he just folded worse than like I've ever seen. He just gave up whilst he was in like half guard.
Yep.
It's like, no, you can just leave me alone now.
Yep. He turned over and covered his face with both hands. Which was great. One of my favorite things about this fight, by the way, was in the first round when it was all going terribly and I thought Tybura was going to lose. I noted, not for the first time, but it really stood out to me because the right hand kept hitting him, that Marcin Tybura's default defense to a right hand is to literally cover his face with his open palm. Like,
Rules.
as one of the best MMA Twitter accounts, in my opinion, said, don't mock him. He's just trying to see if he has cancer. I don't know if you have that game. Do you have that one in the UK?
Yes.
But yeah, it was nice. It was a little poetic justice for me to see Greg Hardy ending the fight in a much more submissive version of that same posture. Yeah, whether it's asthma or the other thing, I mean, it's clear that he's, yeah, like you said, moral tale. Guys who beat women, you expect to be cowards who fold the moment that they realize that somebody is bullying them. And yeah, whatever trauma happened in Greg Hardy's past that turned him into the man he is, he was sharply reminded of it in those final moments against Marcin Tybura, who is now one of two brave Polish heroes in the bad divisions of the UFC. Okay, final fight. Just a couple words on this, but I actually quite enjoyed this. It reinvigorated once again my long-standing appreciation for a guy that I usually only talk about to express how frustrating I find him. But it's Anthony Pettis versus Alex Morono. And we were both rooting, I think, in our hearts for Morono. We're like, he deserves the chance to get slaughtered by a top 10 fighter. You know, let him. This is his moment to get his foot in the door and just get completely owned by someone who's like technically and mentally way worse than him, but is just a better athlete. And having said that, I think we both picked Pettis, right?
Yes.
We just expected him to just crack Morono at some point. And it was kind of a smarter fight than that for Anthony Pettis. And still was like ample demonstration of the one thing that has always been true of him, that I think because of his like flashy style, I still have this enduring feeling that he does not get enough credit for being really, really tough and really brave. Like, he is not that RDA fight, the courage it took for him to go through something like that and still be trying to win after the fifth round. That's just that, to me, that defines Anthony Pettis, and I think it's going to come to define him more and more as he continues into what you very wisely and I think accurately called like the Shogun Hua era of his career. Where
I'm pretty sure this was Sriram, I think, on Twitter who came up with that originally. Yeah. And yeah, it's totally accurate. I mean, especially because we talked about this and we were like, well, that means he's going to have to go for a lot more takedowns in this fight.
Yep.
Sure enough.
He did. He did all the Shogun shit. I mean, he's going to do more dynamic things than Shogun because he's a lightweight. So, like, he's still throwing high kicks and doing crazy acrobatic shit, which is great, because an Anthony Pettis fight wouldn't be an Anthony Pettis fight without one phenomenal kicking combo, which he landed. Did you see the beauty of that final wheel kick he landed that stunned Alex Morono? He threw a right low kick that got Morono to check, and as Morono was still setting his foot down from the check, that right leg was already sweeping up in a wheel kick on the opposite side to smash him in the temple. Like, nobody else does shit like that. Very few people do. So I'm glad that he hasn't fallen to the light heavyweight extent of Shogunness. He's still very clearly a good fighter. But I want to say, like, I actually think, was his footwork better in this fight, or was it just because Alex Morono, like Jeff Neal, forgot how to cut off the cage?
Was what better?
Was Anthony Pettis' footwork, for the first time in his career, better?
I think it's because Morono doesn't really know how to cut off the cage, and is a pretty short puncher as well.
Yeah.
He was struggling even more to close the distance.
There was definitely an intent to get his back off the cage and to make Morono reset that I don't think I've seen much from Pettis before. It may have been easy for him to do it because, like, he was able to, like, JDS style, just sort of skate around at the very extremes of range, where he wasn't in any danger. But he did, like, you know, he did some facsimile of what you're supposed to do against pressure fighters, which I liked. I don't know.
I think he's always done that to some extent, right?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe giving him too much credit.
It wasn't that easy for like Melendez or Henderson to back Pettis up, and they were much quicker fighters than Morono is.
It's true. That's true. He did evade Ben Henderson in their first fight quite a bit.
Did almost do a spit take during the early part of this fight.
Yeah.
I was listening to the commentators. Did you hear them talking about how
they've been atrocious lately, man? They really have. They're ending the year in horrific form.
This wasn't bad. This was just it wasn't like it wasn't ragging on the commentators kind of thing this time. It was when they were talking about how Diego Ferreira had been training for Anthony Pettis. They'd gotten Morono in to pretend to be Anthony Pettis for Diego Pereira.
Oh no!
And I was just like, what?
No, that doesn't work. I mean, I guess arguably his footwork is not that much worse than Anthony's, if at all.
Right.
But he doesn't seem otherwise very much like Anthony Pettis, does he?
I'm trying to think of a fighter who I think is less like Anthony Pettis.
Even just in terms of sheer hotness. Like there's got to be a mental effect of sparring Pretty Tony or fighting Pretty Tony, where you're like, oh, this handsome guy is beating my ass, that you definitely don't get with Alex Morono. You feel like everyone feels like a Chad when they're fighting Alex Morono. He looks like the Bat Boy. Anyway, rough break for Alex Morono. Just a clear hard ceiling on just athletic ability and technical development, which is, as we know, linked to athletic ability, which is why Anthony Pettis has always frustrated me, because clearly he's a way better athlete. He's developed less in his career than Morono already has. But I still I think Anthony Pettis is like a pretty cool, chill dude. He's always an entertaining fighter. And number one thing, this is not like a smart trait or something fighters should aspire to, and yet I have to lionize it. Anthony Pettis legitimately does just fight anybody. Zane pointed that out to me last week. This is not a secret or anything, but sometimes you just have to step back and appreciate the fact that this guy, he doesn't have to fight Alex Morono. He didn't have to fight Carlos Diego Ferreira. He has name value. He could be angling for matchups that mean something. I think Anthony Pettis really is just a fighter's fighter in that way. And I like that about him.
I think, a lot of the sort of technical development and the who he is, I think they have common roots, is that he's just an incredibly stubborn guy who wants to do things his way.
Yeah.
And give a lot of respect to that. But Alex Morono he wasn't necessarily a high risk fight, but he was a no reward fight apart from the paycheck.
Yeah.
And other than that, everyone Pettis has ever fought has been killers. And
has been what?
Pretty much everyone Pettis has fought has been a killer.
Oh yeah.
Going back to I think the most be like Shane Roller. I mean, Shane Roller was pretty decent back in the day, and this was when Pettis had been fighting for 3 years. That's how far you need to go back to 2010 to find someone.
It really is.
And no disrespect to him, as bad as Alex Morono.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's just a physical ceiling. It really is. It's an incredible career to look back on, just the quality of names. And again, I think the fact that the quality of names has arguably dipped recently is still somehow a feather in Anthony Pettis' cap, because he's still just willing to fight them. Now he's at a point where he should be competing with guys who are worse than the killers he's been fighting his whole career. So he's now just fighting a curved version of the same killers he's always been going up against. So mad respect to Anthony Pettis. Weird sort of, we get it after the first round tone to this entire card, and yet I enjoyed it. I saw some fighters that I like do well. It was fine. Perfectly adequate way to end an absolutely devastatingly exhausting year in the UFC.
It's been and down. We've had some weird overperformances and some, huge empty spots. And it's been incredibly hard to keep up with everything.
Yep.
Due to all the people falling out. In the end, I think it's been, be entertaining. Yeah, as far as this side of things has gone, but more than that, most important thing, the year that's given us the rise of Kevin Holland.
Oh, I was going to say the most important thing is that Dana White proved us wrong.
Oh yeah, he did that.
Us media members.
Thanks, Dana.
Got us.
Yeah, proving, in fact, how much he got us and how much he doesn't care about the media by making people make a 5-minute video talking about how great he is.
Yeah. Not mad, the Dana White story.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's been a good year. We're going to wrap it up. Look forward to the handies next week, everybody. I'm very excited about that. We've got a lot of fun categories. I think I'm going to try to mix in also just some genuinely technical categories too. No one cares about the boring generic shit, but we can come up with some more sort of boutique technical categories that are not necessarily just jokes, but there will also be lots of joke categories, and I'm very much looking forward to those too. Phil, yes. I'm assuming with no preview or anything coming up, you got nothing to plug this week. Have you read any cursed teenaged MMA ramblings from those vaping scooter lads?
I have not read much of anything, I'm afraid. I've been extremely busy, and I've not been... And again, it was a struggle to even watch this card, thanks to the wonders of BT Sport.
Beautiful. Well, I don't have shit to plug either. I haven't read a damn thing. I'm ready for this 4-week break. We'll be back with the handies and with some topics. We're going to have some fun with the show for a little minute in the meantime. And yeah, I'm really struggling to wrap it up. I don't know. It's like I'm letting go of this schedule, and I'm kind of scared to let myself drop into the abyss of freedom. This has been Heavy Hands. Is that...
We really shouldn't have talked about the killing of the sacred deer before this, should we?
Good point. That fucked me up.